Welcome back, friends. I read 9 books in the month of August. This is actually my lowest reading month of the year, but I read some of my favorite books of the year hands down in this month. So let's just jump right in and talk about them. I guess if we go from lowest to highest, my lowest book of the month was unfortunately Anji Kills a King. This book is marketed as a fast-paced entry into the fantasy genre, and unfortunately, what I found it to be is for a surprisingly short novel, one that kind of drags in its repetitiveness. We have, it's a bit of a quest novel, which I'm not opposed to. Most recently read Assassin's Quest, which involves a lot of walking, and I loved that. I ate it up. What was frustrating is in here, there's a lot of circular, repetitive dialogue, a lot of really cringy dialogue that only serves to mask certain pieces of information or certain pieces of plot from the reader in order to withhold secrets. Now, I know that that can be done in a good way or done in a useful way. I just don't think it was achieved here. The last 10% of the book was pretty interesting and compelling. I just don't think that it really earned its pages. And while I would be curious to see what he does with the rest of the series, it's not going to be on my high priority list to read. Then I read Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas. I really had a good time with this. This is an extremely spicy historical romance. I would say this is great for anyone who already loves Lisa Kleypas, but maybe don't reach for this one if this is going to be your first book by her, because this book does actually feature 2 couples. And so I don't think that this really shows off all of her skills in developing a relationship, because it is taking time to go back and forth between 2 relationships. However, I did really love these characters and I did have a solid time with it. It just wasn't one of my top ones from her that I've read so far. Then I read Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I would say this is perfect for people who love Emily Henry already, because I really loved the writing in this and I loved the characters. However, if this is going to be your first Emily Henry, I'd say maybe wait till you already have read some other ones, because I don't think this is her strongest work. I think if this book had been a little bit longer, she would have been able to give more time to both sides of this story, because we have sort of an Evelyn Hugo-esque story where we have authors interviewing a famous individual to try and get her life story, and they're competing to publish a book about her. Love that idea, but again, I think it just needed a little bit more time. And if not more time, then the segments about Margaret's past should have been shifted a bit. There was quite a few flashbacks for her as she's retelling her life story that were about her family's life story, which is all well and interesting, except then by the time we get to Margaret's love story, that piece was over and done with way too quickly. So yeah, I still really like her writing, but again, I don't think this should be anyone's first Emily Henry book. Then one afternoon, I picked up and read all the way through The Guy She Was Interested In Wasn't a Guy at All. This is a queer sapphic manga, and the art is just wonderful. I had such a fun time with this. It was funny and cute, and again, like I said, sapphic and lots of yearning and blushing, but without being cringy. And I will absolutely be reading volume 2. Then I picked up Silvercloak by L.K. Stephen. Now, if you've been around here for a minute, then you'll know all of my love for Our Infinite Fates by her. That was published under Laura Stephen, her YA moniker, and this was published as her first adult fantasy. And this is definitely a fantasy romance slash romantasy. I know that there's debate about what those 2 phrases mean. For me, I understand the distinction sometimes, but then also I'm kind of like, okay, well, fantasy romance, romantasy, same diff. However, what I think is important to note is that this is really well thought out fantasy, and I really, really appreciated that. There's great world building, a magic system that was really, really interestingly thought out and very, very unique. So this feels really fresh. I love Laura Stevens' writing. I love her narrative voice. Yeah, I think when I've been watching reviews online, where some people struggle with is feeling like it's a little bit tropey with the intimidating, hard to get to know MMC and the sort of bumbling FMC. I appreciated that they were both older, and I did not find her to be as dumb as maybe others did. To me, she felt very naive and inexperienced, and I do think that there's a bit of a difference there. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. This definitely has some like wands and cloaks nostalgia to it, but in a queer normative world. And I think that just makes for a really fresh and entertaining read. So I would recommend Silvercloak if you are interested in a fantasy romance, heavy on the fantasy, with a satisfying amount of romance and just a dash of spice. Then I read The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This was great. I read this with my friend book club, and my best friend and I both really, really loved it. And so we're going to continue the series in September. But this was a really solid introduction into a new fantasy world for me. I love John Gwynne's writing. He is so descriptive and evocative while also being very efficient. This book is only 470 pages. And so for a fantasy novel, I think he achieves a lot in this first book. I absolutely loved Orca as a main character. I don't think that that is unique to say at all. That's kind of the main thing you hear about this book, is that Orca is amazing. Essentially, we have Orca, who is got a bit of a mysterious past, and she and her husband and young son are living a quiet life until things start to go awry. They find the bodies of their neighbors and are concerned about what's going on. They're hearing about kids being kidnapped. Constant talk of the tainted, which are people who are born with the old god's blood in them. So they have an animal-based magic, which they are attempting to eradicate from the world because of the way that the old gods sort of ruined life for everybody. And then things start happening that set Orca on a path of vengeance, and she is incredibly badass and just like unhinged in the best way. We have two other POVs. We have Varg, who is a thrall, who is his main driving force, as he wants to find someone who can do magic that can give him the memories of what happened to his sister in her last moments before death, because he's trying to avenge her. So I have two sort of vengeance revenge arcs, and then we have Elvar, a noble woman who is on a search, on a quest, if you will, for battle fame, and working and serving in a group called the Battle Grim, and just trying to make a life of her own instead of getting married and having babies and doing everything her dad wants her to do. So all three of these POVs are sort of all doing their own thing until they inevitably intersect in some way, shape, or form, with a very splashy, crazy ending that definitely has me excited for more. I think my only thing that I really struggled with is at sometimes certain phrases were repetitive that sort of stuck out in my brain, and there were times where these three POVs were not quite as distinct as I think they should have been, but still really, really had a good time with this. Yeah, I can see why it gets all the hype. And then last but certainly not least, my peak reading of August was Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny. Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb. Mad Ship is the second book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb, which is the second series in the Realm of the Elderlings overall. And while I understand why some people say you can read this trilogy without having read Farseer, I respectfully disagree. I think you absolutely need to read Farseer so that you pick up on all of the little details in this trilogy. There's namely one character in particular that has some really interesting references or connections or allusions or just interesting comparisons to Farseer that I think are really, really cool to have read Farseer before. You get to this one, and in particular, Mad Ship really ups the ante on the stakes at hand, and all the characters are developing, things are moving. This book had so many moments that made me like cheer and just feel all the feels, whereas Ship of Destiny was devastating and redeeming and beautiful and just wrapped everything up so well for all of the different characters. It makes me truly sad to see them all go, but I know I will reread this series and love it just as much, if not more. Yeah, and I was doing the deep dives for these two with the Chris and Mads Patreon, and it made me so excited to continue Robin Hobb that I read like 60% of Fool's Errand on Labor Day. So That's where we're at with Robin Hobb. These are just infinity stars. I can't even describe how much I loved these two books. And yeah, look out for some more Robin Hobb content. I want to do a couple different things as I'm reading these books. I think what I want to do is a dedicated Farseer video to talk about everything about that trilogy, and I want to break it up into like a spoiler-free and a spoilery discussion about the books. Then I want to do the same thing for the live ship traders. And then what I was thinking would be fun is to sort of do vlog style reading the rest of the books so that I can make sure I'm really capturing a lot of my on the go or initial impressions and thoughts about the books as I'm reading them, because that's just the content that I like to watch. So definitely let me know if that's something that you guys are interested in, if you're looking forward to that kind of content. Let me know your favorite book of this month, what you're excited to read for September, and yeah, I will catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys.